Hey everyone, and welcome to What Did I Miss? While there are not currently any new episodes of Star Trek airing, until the release of the third season of Star Trek Picard in February, there is a very compelling story going on in the pages of a new ongoing comic book series. If you are a fan of this channel, you already know that I have covered the first two issues in this series with their own videos, and I have enjoyed them quite a bit to this point. But honestly, I think this issue was the best so far and really gets me excited for the rest of the series. As in this month's issue, we quite literally get to see round 2 of the battle between Captain Benjamin Sisko and the omnipotent being known simply as Q. We also learn of the death of a very important character from Deep Space Nine that occurred after the finale of the series, while also learning more about a mysterious Vulcan crew member that looks to be a lot more than they are letting on. But before I get into the story, I want to thank you for clicking on this video and remind you to hit the like and subscribe buttons. If you are new to the channel or just missed my prior videos about the first two issues in this series, I will put links to those videos in the description below. Here's a quick refresher of the events so far. Captain Benjamin Sisko has returned from the Bajoran wormhole around 3 years after he left Deep Space Nine, with a mission from the Prophets that he does not quite remember. After getting cleared by Starfleet and still Captain Jean-Luc Picard, he is given access to an experimental NX-class vessel named the Theseus, who just happens to be under the care of Montgomery Scott. Mr. Scott is still alive in this time period, thanks to the events shown in the Next Generation episode titled Relics. And since his rescue by the crew of the USS Enterprise D, he has been working on the ship as its chief engineer. He agrees to join Sisko's crew and takes along a Vulcan ensign named Talir. Sisko is then able to assemble the rest of his crew with many other characters that were either part of another Star Trek series crew or have a close relationship to a crew member from a past series. The chief medical officer on the ship is Dr. Beverly Crusher, who is there to also monitor Sisko's behavior for Starfleet. Another character from the Enterprise D that has joined the crew is Commander Data, who is the ship's first officer. As I stated earlier, this story takes place around 3 years in the Star Trek timeline after Sisko left DS9, so this is still at least a few years before the events of Star Trek Nemesis. There is also Tom Paris at the helm of the Theseus, taking on the assignment after his return from the Delta Quadrant with the rest of the crew of the USS Voyager. Sitting next to him is an Andorian character named Ensign Sato, who is a descendant of Hoshi Sato, who served with the crew of the NX Enterprise under the command of Jonathan Archer. Then finally, in the last issue, Sisko was able to convince Worf to return to active duty and join the crew as well, after he left DS9 as an ambassador to the Federation for the Klingon Empire. Shortly after first assembling, the ship and crew travel to an area of space where they witness hundreds of beings known as the crystalline entity in a state of distress. Before the crew can attempt to make contact, the beings are destroyed by an unseen force with a weapon more powerful than anything any of them have ever seen. Sisko believes that there's a force out in the universe that is trying to destroy other godlike beings and attempts to enlist help from the Klingon Empire, since within their space is a race of beings known to be capable of creating these types of weapons. Even though the Klingon Emperor Kahless, a genetic clone of the original warrior, denies Sisko permission to enter Klingon space, he does so anyway and quickly transports down to the planet to speak with the beings known as Shapers. Ultimately, Data is able to convince these beings not to destroy the crew and instead help them by proving that humanity, in a way, is a godlike race since they were able to create new forms of life, mainly androids like him. The Shapers then reveal that they were forced to make the weapon by the beings that Sisko and his crew are in search of, and provide Sisko with a blood-stained Klingon dagger as the only clue for them to follow. This new issue picks up right after these events, as we first focus on the one crew member of the Theseus that does not seem to have any ties to a past crew or series, the Vulcan Talir. Although this issue definitely shows the reader that Talir is at least not just a Vulcan, and perhaps a member of a much more powerful race. I have a feeling on who or what Talir may be that I will save until I'm done talking about the issue, but I would love to hear your theories in the comments as well. As Talir starts their day, they seem to have to remind themselves that their name is Talir and that they are a Vulcan in Starfleet. Next we see Sisko meeting with Dr. Crusher as they discuss how he is feeling. At first, Sisko tells the doctor that there is no way for her to understand the experience that he went through while he was in the Bajoran wormhole because she has never had the powers of an omnipotent being.
Come on, Spock, it's me, McCoy. You really have gone where no man's gone before.
It'd be impossible to discuss the subject without a common frame of reference.
You mean I have to die to discuss your insights on death?
She reminds him, though, that her son Wesley had a similar experience to what happened with Sisko, and as of the events of this story, he is missing much like Sisko was. Wesley Crusher left the Enterprise to become a traveler, but was then seen not only during the second season of Picard, but also at the wedding of Will Riker and Deanna Troi in the film Star Trek Nemesis. Sisko then questions her motives by asking if she is more interested in helping him or learning something that will help her find her son. Dr. Crusher, however, assures Sisko that this conversation is about him and his behavior. Apparently, the captain is not sleeping and second-guessing the actions of his crew. His actions are leading her to believe that he is no longer human, and she asks Sisko if he or his son believe that he is the same man that he was before he was taken away. While this is happening, we see that Benjamin's son Jake is making gumbo with Talir. Gumbo, of course, being a specialty of their family, as we saw during DS9 that Ben's father Joseph Sisko owned a Creole restaurant in New Orleans. Sadly, though, we learn from their conversation that Joseph Sisko has died sometime before this story, which means that he likely passed away while his son Benjamin was missing. The actor who played Joseph Sisko, Brock Peters, also passed away in 2005, and besides appearing as the elder Sisko in 6 episodes of Deep Space Nine, he also appeared as the villainous Admiral Cartwright in 2 Star Trek films. While they are talking, Talir seems to sense that something is not right and asks for an update from the bridge. However, there's no answer, as we see the crew of the Theseus in various outlandish scenarios that have taken over the ship, such as a cattle drive, a running of the bulls, and a large multi-tentacled creature terrorizing the shuttle bay. Sisko can also seem to sense something and begins to exhibit some type of extra-dimensional power, which allows him the ability to reveal that Q is behind this. Next, we see a file from Starfleet on Q that lists the different encounters that officers have had with them to this point. It recounts the 10 times that Captain Picard and the Enterprise D encountered him, along with the 4 times he visited the crew of the USS Voyager and the 1 time Q visited Deep Space Nine. There's also a very interesting reference to Captain Dolan Prem and the ship the USS London, who apparently encountered Q 7 times. While we have never seen this captain or vessel before, this is a reference to the Star Trek The Next Century tabletop role-playing universe that is based out of Los Angeles, California. I could not find much information about this, but I would not be surprised if one of the writers on this comic book was involved with it somehow after including this very obscure reference and seemingly making it canon to the Star Trek universe. On the Theseus, Sisko starts in on Q basically right where he left off when Q visited DS9, with Benjamin knocking Q to the ground with a right cross. Q then changes his appearance to be that of a Bajoran Vedic and starts to mock Sisko and his relationship with the Prophets. Scotty then contacts the captain and tells him that because of Q's hijinks, the warp core of the ship is about to explode. Sisko and the crew then start to devise a plan to trap or remove Q from the ship, and Talir comes up with a plan to do just that. They race through the ship while avoiding various other crazy scenarios that Q has created, which include them having to ballroom dance and run away from a mob of tribbles. Finally, they reach the warp core, and Talir begins to assert their plan. Q recognizes what they are doing and starts to increase the temperature in the warp core in an effort to make their attempt more difficult, but Talir is still able to complete the task. In doing so, Talir also appears to display some type of enhanced abilities while fixing the warp core. Q then snaps his fingers and ends the predicament, and we see him speak with Sisko within a void. Q tells Sisko that he respects the trust that Sisko put in his crew to solve the issue, and that Sisko did not simply rely on his own omnipotence to save the day. Because of this, Sisko has earned Q's respect, and Q tells Sisko to seek out the god city of Takan next to find what he is looking for. This could be a reference to the Takan Empire, which is a now extinct but ancient spacefaring civilization that was destroyed after their sun went supernova. The first time they were referenced was in the Next Generation episode The Last Outpost, but there was also a reference to their sun going supernova on the front of the newspaper created by the Guardian of Forever in the Discovery episode Terra Firma. This issue ends with the rest of the crew returning back to normal after their experience with Q, except for Talir, who suffered an injury to their chest during the ordeal. Back in their quarters, Talir continues to repeat their name while their body begins to glow, which seems to heal the injury. Because Talir's body glows here, I believe it gives away that they are not a Vulcan, but in fact are an Illyrian, who are a race of aliens that are banned from serving in Starfleet due to them being augmented by genetic enhancements. During the first season of Star Trek Strange New Worlds, the first officer of the Enterprise, Una Chin Riley, who is also known simply as Number 1, was also revealed to be a member of this race after the crew had encountered remnants of an Illyrian civilization. At one point in the season, Number 1 is able to cure herself of an infection after her body starts to glow in a very similar way that Talir's body does to heal them from an injury. Since Number 1 will still be off the Enterprise when the second season of Strange New Worlds begins, there is a chance that if Talir is an Illyrian, that their story can somehow be connected to Number 1 and her experience on the Enterprise. Well, that is all I have this week, but let me know in the comments if I missed anything. Thank you very much for watching this video. Please hit that like button if you have enjoyed it, and I'll see you next time on What Did I Miss?